for us, Mel? If you do, write a question in Q&A, or that's the best way to kind of communicate.
You can read it in the chat if you like.
All right, in the chat. Okay, hang on. Here we go. I'm showing my incompetence here. Here we go. All right, here Mel is speaking to cross-country skiing. Over many years of cross-country skiing, it was almost always available at Thanksgiving, but not all over, and had to go to the South Range a lot. Well, that's good to know. And then we have a lot of greetings for Abby. We have anonymous attendees saying, hi, Abby. Somebody says hello to you. And then Zerpy says hello too. Hi, Zerpy says hello. I can make her speak if you want, but it'll be disruptive. Well, we're coming up on 5:54, so I think we should get kind of, formal. We already have quite a few attendees with us this evening. We have a total of 68 participants, and that means we have about 62 people already tuning in. Let me read up this one more comment from Sid. My favorite town in the Swiss Alps is Saz-Almagel. I probably said that terribly. Beautiful place. Yeah, no, this team of students, this is 3 out of a team of students of 7, was it altogether? Yeah. Were basically kind of retrieved in the pandemic, because it seemed to be the best thing to do to get our students back safely. And then what you're going to hear this evening is a story of how they rallied. And of course, in engineering, you have to have a senior design experience that involves all the elements that are really important for engineers, such as iterative design, solving problems within engineering constraints, and many more things. And so what you're going to hear this evening is the story of how this team did that, as represented by Theo, Ethan, and Haley. So let's go ahead and start recording, Sue. So it is, I'm going to kind of give a lengthy introduction, and then Bill can give a lengthier introduction so that we have an on-time start at 6. So it's my pleasure this evening to welcome and introduce Dr. Bill Endres, or William Endres, who is a really important faculty member here at Michigan Tech. He has personally advised more than 80 capstone teams, and capstone refers to our senior design experience over the past 15 years as director. And in addition, he has supervised or kind of overseen over 350 projects and teams. And so he is a mechanical engineering faculty member in what we call our department of MEME. MEME is like a 4-letter word: mechanical engineering and engineering mechanics. And so, so I want to also note that Bill Predabon is part of our participants. He is one of our sponsors this evening. And Bill, if you want to post a comment on either the chat or the Q&A, we can read that out in a moment. So I'm going to make an unashamed plug for projects, because Bill probably will not. So mechanical engineering and all of the engineering degree programs at Michigan Tech, we teach our students to solve real world problems. And to do that, we need real world problems. And so if there is anybody in industry out there who has a problem that you would like a faculty member and a team of students behind working on across a year, please contact Bill Endres. And so Bill, if you want to put your email out there in chat, that might help people contact you.
All right, let's get started.
So Bill earned his degree at a very famous university, but I think Michigan Tech is an even better one. He then spent a few years at another place, and then he spent the last 20 years here, where here he's serving his 11th year as director of the Mechanical Engineering Capstone Design Program. He also is the, I guess, founder and CEO of Endres Machining Innovations, which is one of the sponsors this evening as well. And when I asked Bill what his hobby was, he said, well, I like to build stuff. And so that made me laugh. And so with that, I introduce co-host this evening, Bill Endres, who will introduce our student speakers and graduate speakers, because two of these people here who are going to present this evening are graduates already.
Well, thank you, Dean Callahan, also for the invitation to be part of the series. I've been aware of it since last spring when it started. It's a really great idea. You mentioned capstone projects, and they really are important. Michigan Tech has a long history of producing engineers who can really do real engineering right out the door. I remember back that other place I was before here, 7 years on the faculty down in Ann Arbor at U of M. When I was deciding to come up here, people asked, well, where are you going? I said, Michigan Tech. And I heard many people say those are the best engineers we hire. And reason being, we have this, there's no mistake, there's 350 companies that come here 2 times a year recruiting our students. And the capstone experience is a big part of that, building on the curriculum that precedes that, which prepares them for capstone, and then capstone prepares them as they get out there to talk about in the ME capstone program, real problems for real people in the real world. And there's actually a very large human element to that as well that we bring in. But let's get going toward getting these 3 to tell a story. I'm going to quickly share how this got started. There were some things going on behind the scenes before they even got into this. And I got really curious on the timeline this weekend because it all went so quickly, as a lot of this COVID stuff did. It began around 10 a.m. on Friday, April 3rd. I happen to know that because it started with an email from Dr. John Beard, colleague of mine, recently retired at that point. And he, like many of us, had been seeing in the news with COVID, the pending shortage of ventilators. And John had served in the military. He's very creative. He's been part of our advising team in Capstone in the past. And he wrote an email saying, hey, it seems like somebody ought to be able to automate an ambu bag, again, from his time in the military for manual ventilation. Well, long email short, he thought, well, that could be a good project for next fall for capstone design or another course. And I read it and I just thought, well, wait a minute, I think that's something for right now. Of course, I knew something he didn't know. I had 7 students who were about to embark on this crazy, highly accelerated capstone project. But I also looked at it from a business perspective too. And I guess to keep the story from getting too long here, 6 hours later, I was on a Zoom meeting, put together some people out of, I guess you'd say, my network. There were 4 faculty from our department, a couple engineers, and an EMT, and started looking at this problem. Sunday, well, I did a deep dive into this world of ventilation, which I knew absolutely nothing about. And Sunday, we ended up in my company office because we were allowed to go in there because it wasn't the university space. And John Stone, a friend from the local area who's EMS trainer, came in with a mannequin, laid it out on the table, and we started on our Apollo 13 approach to coming up with ideas on this. And then the next day on Monday, this team of 7 students started what's normally a 30-week experience, crunched down to a very intense 12 weeks. I'm going to let them tell the rest of that story. I'll let them introduce themselves as well. So with that, guys, go on.
All right, I'm going to interrupt. So Sue, would you please launch that first poll? The first poll helps us understand who our audience is. And so there we go. And so pass it on to the first person who was going to speak. But while they begin to speak, I just kind of wanted to understand who is joining us today. And so most people can see out there who is joining us today. It looks like we have a lot of Michigan Tech students here today. Welcome, Michigan Tech students. I'm sorry, you're going to be going home for Thanksgiving and kind of staying home. This is not our normal, as you know, and so it looks like we've got high school students. We've got 38% alumni here, Michigan Tech family and staff, curious people, and family and friends of Michigan Tech. All right, we can go ahead and stop that poll. All right, take it from here.
All right, hello everyone. So I am one of the students. My name is Haley Edie. I'm a mechanical engineer, currently working at Autodesk here in Massachusetts. Joining me for this presentation is going to be Ethan Twardy and Theo Wachowski. We are 3 of the 7 students that got pulled back from our study abroad, and this is our story. So we all started by the 7 of us, we started by thinking that we were going to Europe. We're gonna have this grand experience. We've been planning for months. We're so excited. And then we get there and then we all know what happened. So 5 of us went to Kiel, Germany, and 2 of us went to Spain. The 3 of us in this presentation all went to Kiel, Germany. And this started in February, and our stuff actually started in March. So our university that we went to, the 3 of us, along with 2 others, was Fachhochschule Kiel, which was in the northernmost part of Germany, which not a lot of people know about. It's basically Denmark. It's a high shipping and naval force, this big hub for the war, and not the most interesting city to look at, but full of lots of history. And this is where we were supposed to be for many months. So the first part of our experience was supposed to be these seminars that we would do. As we started to sort of get into the project, there's just like the different writing and business and starting to really understand how to put a project together, just to refresh if we didn't know, or to kind of get a glimpse if we didn't know anything at all. And so this is what we were doing for the first couple of weeks. And then in the start of these is when we started to really get into the project and know our team and kind of get into the whole swing of things. But during this time is actually where things started to go awry. But we did sort of get into, we did sort of get into the projects, but I forgot about this. So just a quick poll to get us started and warmed up. What is the capital of Germany? I have some selected answers here. Oh, there we go. So the poll is up and you can see.
This is a great test of our geography.
This is.
Knowledge.
And a quick note, so this picture is one that I have taken. You'll see many pictures throughout the slides from our brief time in Germany, or in some that are from actually the Kievan Peninsula. See if you can recognize them as we go through the slides. This one is actually taken from Hamburg.
Berlin is winning on the poll, but there's a strong and steady representation for Frankfurt and Munich.
It is. All right, so yes, Berlin is the correct answer. I don't know how to get out of this.
Just close it. Yeah, all it does is interfere with what you see. It doesn't really interfere. So everybody out there who sees a poll, just X them out after they're over.
Okay, cool. All right, so yes, Berlin is actually the capital. Now you have a fun new fact that you've learned about Germany. All right, so first round of projects. We're going through the seminars, we're starting to get into our groups. We knew actually before going to Germany what our projects were going to be. So me and Ethan were doing the Draeger project that had to do with some concurrent costing. Can't really go into the details of that. But then Theo was actually doing a project for Edie about the business planning and that sort of stuff. So we sort of got these projects and we started to look into them and started to dive into them during the end of these seminars. But that didn't last very long because that's when COVID started to hit. We started to have some countries shutting down. And we ran into this issue of our lovely friend, Andy, who didn't have a passport coming to Germany and had problems with the visa. And so during the whole shutdown, before we could return home, we actually had to go and take a trip to Berlin, or we decided to go with Andy so we didn't have to go alone. And we made an adventure out of us him having to get his emergency passport. So
was that because there was only one of you who spoke German?
He had to go with us, or what do you
or
mean?
Like how many of you spoke German?
I think just Ethan knew some German.
Yeah, so Ethan is sort of like the key to survival in Germany, I think.
Well, I mean, almost everyone knows English in Germany to some degree. Whether or not they will speak it to you is the other question. They might just pretend to be innocent and not know English when they actually do. That happened quite a few times. Or if you get into the rural parts of like Kiel, you'll have like a person that doesn't actually know English and you're like, well, Google Translate. So we were able to get around pretty well, but I mean, Ethan, yes, you are very nice to have around. So thank you. Yes, so it was the 4 of us out of the 5. One of them actually went home earlier. So he was not with us on the trip, but the train picture is actually us going from Kiel to Hamburg. And then we had to take a trip from Hamburg to Berlin. The top picture with the three of the boys is actually from Hamburg and was on the front of the slides. It's just a tower. It's a radio tower that's in the background. Looks fancy, but there's one in every city. That's just how they get their news and everything broadcasted. And then we have a picture, we found a church that has a really cool mechanical part that we all looked at. And you can see that Ethan is very excited about it as a software engineer. So this is what we did. We did this trip in the very end so that Andy could get his passport. And then as things were shutting down, we had to get train passes and try to get back. And it took a bit of effort, but we made it eventually. So then we kind of had a layered effect going back to the United States. I think it started with our teammate Andrew, and then I believe me and Theo were the last ones. We went to the airport together in the end of there, but we made it. But we all went our separate directions. So my family is currently based out of California, though I am from Michigan. And then we had Theo, who's up in the Upper Peninsula for a while there, Ethan, who's up in the Upper Peninsula but the other side, and then the rest of us downstate. So we were very spread out across the board, which made this whole process even more interesting, mostly because we started out with like 6 a.m. meetings for me, which is 9 o'clock for everyone else, which was a great time. Let's put that there. It was great. It was fine. So this is where we were. This is the story. This is it. And then I'm going to pass it to Ethan so we can start going into the second project.
Well, I'm going to jump in and say these students were not going to graduate unless they had completed a senior design capstone project, because it's a requirement that our students are able to solve real world problems with constraints and engineering solutions, iterative design. I mean, this is like serious stuff. We can't sign off on anybody's diploma unless they've done this. So yeah. Take it from there.
A lot of us, just a note, this is our last credit that we needed to graduate. This is the only thing we were waiting on. So definitely very important.
Yep. I was definitely a little concerned about that, but it all worked out. Well, thanks for passing the torch over to me, Haley. You can hit the next slide for me. So as Dr. Endres mentioned, kind of as an introduction, the cast of this story was facing 2 major conflicts at the start of this story where we are now. The first major conflict is that we have 7 recently ex-study abroad students who are returning home from foreign countries who need to have some kind of a placeholder so that they can obtain credits needed to graduate, right? Now, at the beginning of this, it was all very ad hoc, you know. There was rumors that we were all going to be put on one project together. As you can see, that's kind of what happened for a brief period of time. We were talking about doing 2 groups. But eventually we all came together to be on this one project team together. Would you hit the next slide for me, Haley? And so here's a brief intermittent poll. What does BVM stand for? Oh, we've got some smart audience members here. Give it a couple more seconds for all the results to roll in.
It's pretty much a tie between A, B, and C at this point, but very few people fell for choice D.
Who's responsible for hitting the end poll button? Is that? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So as well, I've got the results right here. It looks like C, bag valve mask, is the one, the answer that won the popular vote, and that is the correct answer. So nice job to 39% of you who got that right. Okay. Could you hit the next slide for me, please, Haley? Perfect. So the second problem that we were facing was that, as Dr. Endres had brought up, it was April. And the COVID pandemic had just reached full stride, essentially. We were in the middle of a ventilator shortage. Mechanical ventilators are critical for treating some patients suffering from COVID-19. And so we kind of needed a product that would fit some of the more edge cases. You know, we were targeting a lot of places, for example, where we had a lot of these ambu bags, or for short-term ventilation, or for places where we needed to reserve these high-end mechanical ventilators from manufacturers like Medtronic for some of the more critical cases, but some of the stronger patients could be put on this other product. And so through some brainstorming and think tanking, this is how we came up with the idea for this project. Dr. Endres and some subject matter experts. Next slide for me, please, Haley. So here's another poll for you. How much volume per breath in milliliters per kilogram of ideal body weight is considered safe?
Ethan, where is this?
Oh, this is Hamburg. This is the Hamburg Opera House. There's kind of this fjord that comes right through the city. And actually this river right here was very important for transporting ships from one end of the country to the other during World War II. But right there, that funky looking building is the Hamburg Opera House. And I think I was actually standing with you when you took this picture, Haley.
Yep.
That was a good day.
Well, it looks like people aren't really sure, but B, that's what I would have. I always answered B when I didn't know, because it gave you the better odds of getting the question right back when in the day,
Well, and it looks like, again, the popular vote won out. We've got some smart audience members. So yeah, 47% of you answered B, which is the correct answer. All righty. Next slide, please. One more poll question for you. Which one or more factors affect ideal body weight?
Where is this one, Ethan?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So this one is also in St. Michael's Cathedral. This is the earlier where you saw the other two boys being very fascinated with that old brass machinery, and me not as much. But so this is a really cool place. If any of you ever get the opportunity to go to Hamburg, it's an incredibly old cathedral. It burned down 3 times, which is why you can see all the damage to the brick here. This is, I believe, right under. This is the original brick from the middle of 1600s, I believe, and it burned down 3 times, about down to here. Really cool place though. Okay, and so the results have come back for this one. Yeah, it looks like all of you did pretty well. So this one is actually a twofer. 79% of you answered D, height, which is correct. And then another 54% of you also answered male versus female. Yeah, so it was a choose one or more. But yeah, those are the 2 primary factors. Next slide, please, Haley. Okay, so now we're kind of back to our narrative a little bit more. After conversing with some subject matter experts and kind of thinking critically about the problem, Dr. Endres came up with a solution for us to build essentially here I wrote it as a commercially viable mass manufacturable product that would mechanically actuate an ambu bag or a bag valve mask. Ambu bag is one of the primary manufacturers. It's like saying Kleenex for tissue. And so the 7 of us were put on this project team together. Dr. Endres was our customer representative, representing Endres Machining Innovations in collaboration with Michigan Technological University. And he was also our instructor. And one of the really nice things that happened to come about because of that is that we had really high visibility on the needs of the customer and the product. And so whenever there was a question about the problem domain or a question about the specifications of the product, we were able to really get a quick turnaround on our answer for that. That came in super handy, especially with the time crunch that we were under. One of the issues that we faced right at the beginning was the breadth of the scope of this project. We were 5 mechanical engineers, 1 software engineer or computer engineer, and then 1 electrical engineer. Now you'll notice there are no biomedical engineers on this product. And so we don't have a whole lot of anatomical knowledge between us. And so it became really important to kind of probe our problem domain and ask lots and lots of questions. But luckily, MIT got us started with a project that they started in 2014 or 2013. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. It's 14.
Okay, 14, yeah. So this was their first attempt at building essentially what we were trying to do. This is obviously a research and development type model though, would not be commercially viable or mass manufacturable. And so our goal was to take this principle and improve upon it to make something that would be more suitable to the problems that we were facing in the world at the time. Could you give me the next slide, please, Haley? So I'll hand it over to Theo here for this one.
Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, I think you kind of really hit it on the head about there was a bunch of engineers trying to solve a medical problem, so we didn't really know the ins and outs of what a person needed, kind of in terms of the breadth or the parameters. So one of the things that kind of really came in handy was this Army X-Tech challenge, where they were giving grants out to anybody who can kind of do exactly what we were kind of aiming for, this ventilation with an ambu bag. And from that challenge, they actually had some like kind of problem understanding guidelines to what they wanted the product to look like and what the requirements were for their thing. So we kind of worked off of that, and as well as working off a lot of our kind of research that we did independently on existing ventilators and a lot of different things that can happen. And I guess one of the issues that we did see come up was these bags didn't have any way of heating and humidifying the air, as well as they didn't really have amazing filters, or it didn't come with it a lot of times. You had to get an extra external filter. So we had to come up with ways to figure out how we address these and kind of move forward with the project, knowing what's a priority for us and what we think is helpful in this situation. Yeah, next slide.
Yeah, so kind of going into the next phase after we figured out the problem and kind of had some of an idea, kind of went through this whole concepting phase into the actual working through the problem and then into prototyping. So just kind of some basic bones, gonna throw some jargon at you. You can take it or leave it. So we went through and did some like 100 questions, and we went through and had a whole bunch of questions and had to ask a whole bunch of different people, whether it be ourselves, the internet, Dr. Endres, or other subject matter experts that we could get a hold of. And then we kind of went into some function structure diagrams and starting to understand the problem and how to get the energy and different things from one side to the other and what actually looked like on the inside. And then really understanding what we needed from the problem and getting different concepts. So we had multiple rounds of this, like you draw a picture of something, you have different ideas, you put them all together. We all come together as a group and decide which parts we like of what and kind of rate them and review them as a sort. And that went many, many rounds. We call it the Pew analysis, as some of you might understand and may not, it's fine. So we did that many a time. And then we kind of got into the actual development of the product. So we have Ethan, who kind of has all the software stuff that we just dumped all on him. Thank you, Ethan. And then we have Andrew, who is our electrical, who did a whole bunch of electrical diagrams to make sure we understood that. And then Theo and I, and we also had John working on the different 3D modeling and then the FEA analysis and really understanding what was going to break and when. And this is kind of the whole process we went through to make sure that we got the product that we were looking for and hopefully actually achieved all the engineering requirements that we were looking for. And in the end, we got a pretty okay product, I must say. So can't show you the entire thing because there might be some things that are patentable, but it's a pretty good CAD diagram of what we had accomplished. Pass it back to Ethan.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so one thing that's really important to mention that we haven't brought up yet is that at the beginning of this, we were only originally scoped to do a virtual prototype. And at the beginning, we weren't quite sure exactly what form that was going to take. We were thinking some CAD, we would do some software emulation, we would do some electrical analyses to kind of prove that this was feasible and viable and that it could be done. But towards the end of our project, as the CAD started to take a better shape and we started to have a more clear idea of what it would take to make this product a reality, the whole team, mostly driven by Dr. Endres, decided to do a real physical prototype to kind of wrap up the senior design experience. And so we entered this really intense prototype test refine cycle wherein Theo, who was thankfully at Michigan Tech for a large portion of the time, was able to act as kind of the hands and feet for Andrew and I for integrating the three elements, the mechanical, the electrical, and the software, in addition to doing all of the work to put together the actual prototype of the device, working with machinists and learning how to read wiring diagrams and putting together assemblies and doing all kinds of things. And we spent many, many hours debugging this device over Zoom. We would spit out a software build, and Theo would download it onto our development book kit that we had, and we would test it, and it wouldn't work. And so then we would think about it and brainstorm ideas for a second, and then Andrew or I would fix something in the code, and then we'd rebuild and we'd send it back to him over the internet and just kind of repeat that over and over. Sometimes it was really frustrating, but that experience actually, it was something that I never expected to be doing, but it became immediately valuable because I'm doing kind of the same thing for one of my projects right now. And that's kind of, I'm sure it's a problem that everybody is facing right now with kind of this distributed prototyping problem. And it was really valuable. Give me the next slide, Haley. Oh, yeah. And so I already kind of talked about this a little bit, but you can see some pictures here from that effort right there on the bottom right. That's Theo putting together the prototype. Andrew was kind of managing a lot of the electrical side. So that was up on the top left. And then on the bottom, you can see a picture of me hanging out with my dog, working on the software for the product and managing my software backlog. And that's all. Next slide, please, Haley.
All right, I guess we're kind of now at the point where the project's kind of done, and a lot of these guys got their degrees and they graduated and everything kind of worked out. And then I think a few weeks after the dust settled, Dr. Endres sent out an email with the kind of proposition to kind of move forward with this more, with kind of a business startup idea. Kind of there was some potential with it, and we thought we could kind of pursue that. So I was still a student up here. I had some extra free time, so I figured I'd join in on the fun. And one more kind of, I guess, outside student, Austin, was a part of the, he was currently an intern at the MTech Smart Zone, decided to join in on the business idea. So it was kind of the three of us, me, Austin, and Bill, who kind of moved forward with this whole continuing on with the project almost. And with this kind of continuation, we decided to kind of shift gears a little bit away from the COVID thing and move a little bit more towards kind of cardiac arrests and kind of dealing with more of the respiratory things that are kind of day-to-day common that kind of anybody would need, and less kind of the niche COVID stuff. And kind of alongside our development of our device, Bill and a couple of his coworkers and a number of team had this separate device that you kind of see here in the picture on the right, where it's had similar kind of scope, similar goal, but it was a little bit different in the way they executed it, completely separate from everything we were doing. So we kind of had these two parallel ideas that we were thinking either combining or figuring some one kind of general idea that they could work together with. So yeah, next slide. This is our next poll question. So for when you're doing CPR, what's the kind of compressions that you need to do on somebody's chest? What BPM?
B.
All right, this one's a little bit divided.
It's interesting that nobody fell for D. One person. What if they're right?
Maybe.
And a lot of us
hope not. All right, well, at the end of that, the majority was 40 to 60. First one wrong, I guess, majority-wise. The correct answer is 100 to 120. And I guess a good way to remember this for kind of people who don't know or people who have never learned it is there's a number of songs that also have this BPM. So if you want to go to the next slide, kind of, I don't know if people want to answer in the chat or something. Just figuring that's something they could throw out there. If they knew a song that had this BPM, beats per minute, I guess now.
So someone has noted already, staying alive.
That's in fact one that was named by EMTs. They either play it in their head or sometimes literally play it.
Yeah, no, that's that. I think that's
Another one bites the dust.
So if you want to go to the next slide, here's a couple of other ones, but yeah, that's on there. Staying alive.
That's good. We've got some EMTs out there, I think.
Another one bites the dust might not be a good one under the circumstances.
It's
Yeah,
sort of, you know, it's engineering humor, Bill.
Gotta be optimistic. All right, I'm going to the next slide. So, with this new team, we had 2 students who were both engineering students who didn't really have a ton of business background. So we kind of had to take a crash course in learning how to do all of the business building and business planning kind of thing. So we were following kind of this I-Core program that had a number of videos and a number of kind of instructional things that we could go along with. And one of the things they stressed was this business model canvas here up in the top left, where you kind of map out kind of where you think your business may be or where it'll end up. They say you should probably do this on like a whiteboard with some sticky notes and kind of work it out as a team. But since we were all kind of still remote at that point, we were just working through, I think, Google Docs and Google Drive and stuff for that. And the other 2 things that we had were these 2 books that we read, The Mom Test and Talking to Humans, which both kind of went over kind of the first step of kind of this startup business planning, where you have to do your customer discovery or go out and talk to people and kind of figure out, like, is this thing worth it? Is there actual use? Is there people who are interested in this device? And kind of find out who our market is or who our kind of main customer is. So yeah, next slide. So we kind of determined that the people that we were shooting for to kind of either talk to, learn from, or hopefully kind of work towards an ideal customer were these EMT, EMS personnel, these professionals who are kind of either on scene, working with people when they get to anybody who has had a cardiac arrest, kind of in their like homes or in public areas, as well as kind of the ER doctors and hospital nurses who are dealing with kind of codes on the floor, who have to rush and deal with this in honestly a pretty similar manner as they would out in the field with the similar kind of BVM and number of different tools. And I guess the one last thing is kind of the medical directors and the people kind of making the purchasing decisions on a number of things. So we kind of had to learn a bit more about the industry and kind of figure out whose role was to do what and kind of get a good idea of the whole medical world, which was kind of foreign to us at that point. And at this point, I kind of want to touch on some of the highlights of these interviews that we did. We did a total of 30 different ones where we talked to a number of these people from all walks of life. And one of them I want to head on is John Stone, who Bill kind of mentioned a little bit at the beginning, who's a local here, who actually started the MTU EMS group. So he's been a long time with the Michigan Tech family. And he was big on giving us a lot of insight and a lot of direction and how kind of this can be applied to the rural community that we have here at Tech. And the second one is Cheryl Bice, who was a medevac paramedic, I believe, from Idaho. So she had access to this helicopter with all the top line equipment and kind of this, everything that you would need to deal with these kind of basic life support or advanced life support sometimes situations out in the wilderness. And while we were talking to her, we kind of realized that she wasn't necessarily the person that we wanted to pursue as far as a customer, because she had the money and, or the business she was working for had the money for the kind of the top of the line equipment. And we were looking for more of a low end, low tech, affordable alternative to these nice fancy tools that they were able to use. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is kind of this is a little comic out of the book. I think the Talking to Humans book, where it kind of highlights why we need to actually do this research, especially as engineers or scientists that kind of get stuck in our own little rooms and our own little minds about what we think is right. And yeah, we kind of we're able to break out of that room, get out of the building and talk to these people and learn from them. So next slide. And this that wrapped up a little bit as the semester started, and we all kind of got busy with classes. Dr. Endres is doing his capstone project with this craziness that's going on still. So kind of where we're at now is kind of determining that product market fit, where we have the information, we have some of the feedback from our interviews that we did, and now it's on to us to kind of determine where we want to kind of move forward in the direction, kind of pivot on what we've learned and kind of build on everything and kind of figure what we want this new product to look like, or what we think these people would actually pay for at this price point, and continue from there. There's still a lot of learning, and there's still a lot of kind of figuring out what we need to do and more development. But yeah, that's kind of the future moving forward. I guess you can move on to the next slide. Kind of a little bit of a thank you slide to some of the people that helped us throughout the way, either in the whole capstone progress or the business thing moving forward. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have a few slides that I want to share, and then while I'm doing that, I would encourage everyone you can load up questions in either Q&A or in chat. Either way, either one will work. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And let's see. I've got too many windows open. This is what always happens. Right, I am not able to share my screen. Why not? Here we go. More. Here we go, share screen. Oh, look, it wants me to update my software, not now. All right, so I want to just show you a few slides. So first of all, I want to just really thank our sponsors. This evening's presentation has been sponsored by Mechanical Engineering Mechanics Chair, Bill Predabon, who is participating with us in the audience this evening, and he's posted some comments in Q&A and chat. And also by Endres Machining Innovations, which is owned and operated by Dr. William Endres, who is our co-host this evening. I do want to just point out that if anyone is interested in sponsoring one of these webinars, just send a quick email to engineering@mtu.edu. 100% of the proceeds go to student scholarships. This is a webinar series that is offered by the university. My name is Janet Callahan. I'm Dean of the College of Engineering. Our next session is going to be really special. We are featuring one of our alumni. His name is Marty Lagina. He's also a mechanical engineering graduate. He is also CEO at Heritage Sustainable Energy, a winemaker, and he's one of the two brothers and star of Curse of Oak Island reality TV series on the History Channel. So we're really looking forward to that. That's going to take place in Thanksgiving week. Totally looking forward to that. We have one sponsor. I wanted to point out that for hockey night, we had 23 different sponsors, which raised, gosh, over $2,000. So I'm hoping to beat that. I don't know if we possibly can, but I also wanted to mention that so far this year, we've raised nearly $6,000 of scholarship money from all our various sponsors so far. And I want to thank them for that. After Marty Lagina, we have three other, actually we have two other after Marty, and you can see the titles here, and we're gonna wind up the season on Monday, December 7th with Lake Superior in my driveway, which is gonna be talking about snow. Totally, we're gonna be talking about snow. And then I wanna point out that these Husky Bites webinars are all available to you on the website. You're just gonna Google Husky Bites Michigan Tech. Otherwise, you're gonna see pictures of Huskies biting people, which they don't normally do. And so you're going to end up at the website, and you can see that all the next speakers are shown there. But what I also wanted to point out is that you can see the full lineup kind of going back in time. And all of these webinars are stored as streams. So if you happen to miss one, or you're curious about something, you can go back and look at those, and you can also look back at summer. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Bill, if you see any questions in the Q&A that you'd like answered, would you go ahead and start moderating that part?
Sure. One question is, was senior design a semester or a whole year? Here at Michigan Tech, we have 4 departments that do a 2-semester sequence: mechanical engineering, electrical and computer engineering, material science engineering, and biomedical engineering. So normally these projects are 2 semesters, so 14 weeks plus finals week times 2 is 30 weeks. And this team had that compressed down to 12 weeks, which meant they were meeting, we had class twice a week and advisor meetings twice a week and a day off, I guess it was. So that's how it normally goes. Mechanical engineering, due to our size in part, we actually have 2 groups going during the regular year. We have a fall spring group, and then we have another group that starts in the spring, takes the summer off, and finishes in the fall. The other departments have just a fall spring group, but we do have students from those departments sometimes come over to start in the spring. And we also interact and have, we share students back and forth between departments to fill needs on quite a few multidisciplinary projects that we bring in.
Just want to interject that our study abroad is only meant to be 1 semester of a Germany semester, just to clarify that too.
Yeah. Let's see, another question. What's the hardest part of getting where you're at? I assume that's not for me, so go ahead, guys.
Getting to where we're at, how? Like where we are job-wise or life-wise?
I don't know, I'm just reading.
I mean, I could...
that name if it's who I think it is. I guess take it how you want.
Well, I can say how I got to my job, as I had an internship every single summer. And though I did not get any of them from Career Fair, I got them all from LinkedIn and just applying to literally everything. And I got an internship with Autodesk last summer, and it led into my job. Loved it. Team loved me. It worked out.
LinkedIn is a pretty useful platform for professional purposes, and I encourage any of our students who are out there who don't yet have a LinkedIn account, get yourself a LinkedIn account, and then connect with me and with your, all your faculty and all your fellow students, and it's a great network. I strongly encourage it. So are you guys all seeing this last slide, which is for more information, please contact Dr. Bill Endres. Can you guys see that now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Good. Is your email on that, Bill? Yes.
Yes, it is.
So why don't you put that in the chat, just put your email and your contact information in the chat, and then let's stop screen share so that people can see the different participants. It helps people be able to see the people speaking. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask them. We take questions until 7, and then at that time we thank the speakers, and we often extend it to 7:15. So I have some advice. I have a question for, so 2 of you have just graduated. 1 of you is graduating in December. So what advice do you have for students across Michigan Tech and possibly beyond who are going to be needing to finish up their senior projects, possibly remotely or partially remotely? What advice do you have?
I feel like you have to have a really good team. I feel like it was easy for us because we clicked very well together, and we each had different sections that we worked on. Like Theo was like the CAD lead. I considered myself the mom of the project to make sure everything got done, and kind of picked up pieces and got all the paperwork done. And Ethan was software, and like everyone had their roles. So clearly define who's doing what. I mean, you can always help in different areas later, but kind of make sure you know what everyone's doing and help like keep them accountable for what they're doing. Because especially online, it's really easy to just say, oh, I'll do it later. And something that helped us as well is we used ClickUp, which is kind of like this project management tool. And you can keep track of the different tasks and making sure that what people are getting done and you can assign them whatnot. And that really helped us, as well as keeping everything super organized in our Google Drive. That's what I would say.
I guess to kind of add to that, we need to kind of really be able to plan for change. The whole time we were kind of thinking on our feet and getting ready for things to kind of go haywire and not go to plan. And it really kind of helped us kind of prepare ourselves to kind of how things are going to go along in the whole COVID epidemic. Because even today, things are changing with where people need to be and kind of what needs to get done.
Yeah. Well, so Theo, what got you interested in foreign languages? And boy, it sure turned out that you were a useful person to have on, out there in Germany.
That was Ethan.
Was that question meant for
Ethan,
me?
Ethan, sorry. Ethan's the linguist.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it started, I had a friend who was really into foreign languages in high school. She spoke Japanese, Korean, and French. And she really inspired me to pick up a foreign language. I tried many times before I succeeded. I started learning French in high school, and then I gave up on it. And then I started learning Japanese to kind of be able to converse with her. And when I got to tech, I wanted a foreign language that would be interesting, would stimulate me. And I also wanted to get out of global issues, if I'm being perfectly candid. So that was when I signed up for the German minor. And ever since then, it's been a whirlwind. It's a really rewarding skill.
That is a great lead into a question regarding language. What language did you use for the controls?
Yeah, okay, so that was all the software for the project was written in C++. It ran on an ST microelectronics product with using some of their software libraries. We used free RTOS for the operating system. And the controls themselves it was a software implemented PID controller, and that was all just written in C++.
All right.
So there's a question I want to take from Scott. How I guess kind of how important is taking art in high school, and does that help you with engineering? And I would say that engineers are very creative people, and most engineers that I have met need something to help them be to be creative, because some of engineering is learning the basic tools, which means making sure you do your math homework and that kind of stuff. But while you're doing that, you also need a creative outlet. And I don't know if any of you guys want to add something to that response.
Creative.
Music.
How do you keep your creativity alive? I know, Haley, you swing dance, right? But yeah.
I do swing dance. I also work on numerous projects. I'm usually always doing something. In high school, I made a duct tape dress for prom, and I paper mache. I do literally anything. I tried almost everything once. Painting, building, yeah, literally anything. But first, robotics really is what pulled me in and kept me going. Since I did that high school, and then I mentored in college, and that's really, working with robots is really what keeps me going.
Any other comments about creative outlets?
Well, in my free time, I play the drums. I'm a drummer in a metal band, and I also am kind of an amateur writer. It's important to have creative outlets, things that you enjoy doing, but that you're not necessarily gonna want to pursue as a career.
For sure.
Bill, do you want to pick a question or?
Sure. I don't know exactly how to drive this. Am I supposed to click something here or just ask?
Just read it out. Yeah.
All right. Question is interning a requirement at Tech? I highly recommend it and hope all students take advantage of those opportunities if they can. Well, we have about 200 students who come through the ME capstone program each year. And I look at a one-page resume from every one of them. So does our sales engineer, and this happens twice a year because we have 2 groups coming through. And I don't take down the numbers, but I can say the vast majority of our students here at Michigan Tech have had at least 1 summer internship, often 2, sometimes more than that. There are some who haven't, but it's very common. And my position would be, yeah, absolutely get out there and do something.
Better people doing co-ops for sure too.
Yeah.
Michigan Tech students are pretty highly sought after, even after they're just their first year for internships and co-ops. But you've got to be proactive too. You've got to kind of do those applications, send those applications in. And I hear you've got to do it in fall, right? So if there's first year students out there, and you might just think, all right, it's Thanksgiving break, I better apply for a couple internships. So I wanted to handle this question from Gary. What is unique in the design of the product that you built that makes it valuable? And have you figured out a price point to penetrate the market?
Are we allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, Bill, do you want to?
Well, price point, we have some general idea based on competing solutions. And they have their drawbacks as well. So if there's something out there that we couldn't beat or slip into a different application than they cover better, then we wouldn't have anything. And we're not even sure to carry this forward, although it's definitely not a no at this point. We have a little bit more research to do. In terms of what differentiates it, part of it is familiarity. It's based on a BVM, which they all know how to use. It offers continuity as well as consistency and correctness. Now, when I say correctness, that's not to be critical of them. They're in a very intense situation. Frankly, I don't know how they pull it off. But, and I've spoken with various people we interviewed. By the way, we've interviewed 33 people now, and I've had follow-up with a couple of them since then. They don't take it as a critique at all when we talk about doing it correctly, because some are in very rural area, they don't do this real often. And others who do, there's adrenaline, there's mind drifting, there's all sorts of things that can get in the way of getting the timing right, as well as getting the amounts right. So the device we have would ease their burden. And frankly, they don't care about the burden on them. This is amazing people who do this. Making life easier for them, they like that, but not so much for them, but because it helps them serve their patients better. The way they talk about the importance of serving their patients and improving their chances of a positive outcome is really, frankly, it's moving, inspiring. So.
Yeah, no, it's important. All right, so I'm changing the subject a little bit. So Ethan, what band, and is it on Spotify?
Oh, it's just me and a couple of friends. We just play covers of bands, and we do play in bars, and it shows around the area. It's not a serious thing.
Do you have a name?
It changes all the time. We don't really, no, not really. It's just a group of guys.
Just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
All right, and then John Beer just comments, many thanks to students for going with the project, and it was really exciting to see an idea go from an email suggestion to a real solution. Thanks, John. And then, is there any possibility for this device ever being available as a home medical device for consumer use for family caregivers to use in case of an emergency?
That is actually similar to a market segment that we are thinking about, and where some of the additional conversations have to take place, possibly at home, but actually en route to that would be, you see AED devices in public spaces and others. We need to learn a little bit more about how and why they end up there. But a device such as this to complement that, hanging on the wall with it, is part of our potential business growth. It's probably not where we would enter the market, but we see it as a complementary one. Then you talk about home. I think it probably depends on getting the price point down to where it would make sense. But between there would be, if we can get a price point where it's profitable, right? Profit's not bad. A company can't be a negative profit company or it's not going to last. So to have a price point that's profitable and low enough that first responders, especially in rural areas, whether it be police or volunteers, can have it in their trunk because they are often the first ones on the scene. And if there's only one of you doing chest compressions and operating the bag valve mask at the same time, well, try to imagine that, right? Chest compressions are very exhausting. I only can say that because we've been told that by just about everybody we talk to. And even if there's two of you, you're trading off every couple minutes on chest compressions. If you don't have an airway installed, getting a good seal with a mask almost takes two people. You need one person to hold the mask to get a seal and the other one to do the bag. So you can see very quickly, you need really two people, maybe more. If somebody's qualified to put an airway in, even a supraglottic airway, which is a somewhat newer, very simple one that to go in, that helps. So I guess what I'm getting at is at price point, as production volumes can go up and we can cater the feature set to these different market segments, I think that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, Bill. And so folks out there, I know we have a lot of alumni out there. I do want to kind of repeat, Michigan Tech, all of the engineering departments, all of the programs are always actively looking for real world problems for students to work on across a year-long sequence, where in the first semester, there's a lot of kind of learning about what the problem is, doing some research, and then it moves to the design phase. It does iterative design. It's looking at the realistic world, real world constraints. And then at the end of this process, you end up with a solution that a faculty member and a team of students have contributed to. So do send Bill Endres if you are interested in any projects. And Bill, maybe you could post that also in the Q&A, because your email. So Bill Endres is the director of senior project in mechanical engineering. And even if you have a different project from mechanical engineering, he'll make sure that your idea gets directed to the appropriate senior project. Absolutely. So I want to take this question from a high school student studying German. How much does that prepare me for Michigan Tech and the real world? And how far away am I from a minor in German? So let's imagine that this high school student manages to graduate with an AP course in German. And maybe, Ethan, you can take that question.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know off the top of my head how much transfer credit an AP course gives you. I do know that there's a placement test that you can take on it. Oh yeah, and looks like it's been answered in the chat, but yeah, that's exactly right. 18 credits, 6 classes for a minor. It took me a long time because they were very serially, scheduled, and I didn't take the placement test. So take the placement test if you have any amount of German experience. Even if you don't, take the placement test. That'll get you ahead.
And I'm going to guess that gets you 1 or at most 2 courses ahead into that minor. That's my guess.
Well, I actually had a friend who took AP German, and he spoke it pretty fluently when he took the placement test, and it got him. So AP gives 9 credits. Yeah.
Oh. Excellent, Amy.
There we go.
Wow.
Thank you.
So no, I did not know this. The AP, I guess getting a 3 or better on the AP course, and Amy will correct me if I'm wrong, gets you halfway through a minor. 9 out of 18 credits. That's impressive. So you should keep taking your German.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good for you, learning. All right, and so what else? What other questions do you want to answer, Bill?
Well, here's a quick one asking me, have I ever partnered with students to launch a business? And the answer would be no. Although my business partner, Doug Woodruff, who also helped out quite a bit with this, I had founded my company a couple of years before he came on, but he was a student on a senior design team that I advised, and ended up coming on board, been with me since then for about 13 years now. He has some stake in the business as well.
Have you considered prototyping using an Arduino board? How did you pick the processor you used?
Ethan.
I can take this one. Yeah, so we did briefly consider Arduino. The unfortunate part is that Arduino it's very canned. So it doesn't provide you a whole lot of customization, didn't have all of the connectivity that we needed. And from a software standpoint, it didn't give us the freedom that we needed. We needed quite a bit of processing power in order to be able to sample all of our telemetry at the rate that we needed in order to be able to perform our algorithms. Arduino did not really give us a whole lot of, it didn't meet those requirements. We picked the ST Microelectronics product because ST makes great products. They have a great software support, which was really important for us. We had really mature hardware abstraction libraries that we could leverage so that we can get us off the ground really quickly. And that was, it was pretty much going to be ST or NXP. Those are both like really solid manufacturers with great support.
Outstanding. All right, so we do have 9 open questions and we have time to cover them, and we will cover them. What I'd like to do on the hour is to just make sure I thank the speakers. I want to especially thank co-host Bill Endres for being here this evening, and even more especially to thank our 2 recent Michigan Tech graduates and our 1 about to graduate student for, this is the first student presentation we've had on Husky Bites, and you have done your alma mater and soon to be alma mater really proud. Thank you for agreeing to do this and for, all the, well, I'm sorry your study abroad got cut short, but I'm really glad to have had a chance to get to meet you and to learn about your project. So, Bill, do you have a question in mind to answer next, or do you want me to pick one?
But yeah, I'll pick one because it's involving FIRST Robotics, which is near and dear to my heart. Before I read the question, I learned of it when my 25-year-old daughter, who was mentioned in here, she's the EMT who got with us that first day. She was in 6th grade and got into FLL. And ever since then, she and her 2 brothers, all the way through, they were members of Wild Sting 111 in Chicago through their high school. And anybody who's thinking about FIRST Robotics, it's fantastic. I mentioned I look at those resumes of our students every year. My eyes light up every time I see FIRST Robotics on there. If I had a magic wand, we'd have at least 1 FIRST Robotics student on every capstone design team we have. That's how highly I think of it. Now, the question, get off my soapbox, Haley and Theo, how did FIRST Robotics lead you to engineering?
Theo, do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk a little bit on it. I started, I believe, in the middle school version of FIRST Robotics. I cannot quite recall the name of it. And then kind of fell in love with it and transferred all the way up into the high school version of it. I was on the Western team down in Kalamazoo, and then I joined in on the Strike Force Robotics team at some point during my high school kind of years. And honestly, it kind of really cemented how much I loved kind of putting things together and actually seeing a result kind of out there on the field, like working through the problems, like in the heat of the moment while you're at the games or while you're planning the whole thing and designing it from the beginning. And kind of from that, I knew I wanted to do something related to engineering. I wasn't super aware of where I wanted to end up, but I figured kind of mechanical engineering was broad enough that I could learn a lot about different fields and kind of choose where I wanted to go from there. So that's kind of how it pointed me towards tech, because of the kind of reputation it has for mechanical engineers.
For me, how do you not go into engineering from FIRST Robotics? Like, it's either engineering or business. There is business in there. We forget about it sometimes, but there is that business aspect of FIRST Robotics. But how I got into it, I actually grew up in an engineering family. Shout out to my dad for engineering. So kind of always had an idea but wasn't quite sure. Got kind of dragged into FIRST Robotics, not really knowing what it was since it was the first year. Actually, we had a team at my school. I started out on the CAD team, not knowing what I was doing. I was learning Inventor, which is comical now that I work at Autodesk. And kind of just developed into working on the chassis and working on the different teams and working on the mechanical team and still kind of doing CAD. Did some photography for a while for the team, did not really know what I was doing, all the way up until I was a driver and actually captain of the team. I feel like it just, once you get into it, you can't get out of it very easily. You either really, really like it or you just drop out. It's fine. Those people, we still like you. But I feel like if you like working with your hands and you like being a part of a team and accomplishing this goal, that you get a project and you get the game and then you have 6 weeks to build and then you have 6 weeks of competition. How can you not be excited about building this robot and then competing with other teams? It's just all very exciting, and thus Michigan Tech.
All right, Haley, we're going to use that video clip to, advertise.
I love robots. Let's be honest. I just did an event the other day with New Hampshire.
Oh, it's so nice to spend time with you guys. All right, there's a couple of questions. If Amy Monty is still on, can you answer these questions about, is it worth taking a placement test if you graduate high school with actual college credits from a CCIHS program for foreign languages? So if Amy's still on, maybe she can answer that. And then the other one is, does I.B testing change the amount of credits I could earn when I test it? Amy, you could probably answer it by writing a Q&A right out there, and then people can read it. I honestly don't know the answer to those questions, so I'm hoping Amy's still on. And while she's working on the answer to those questions, perhaps we could take, so this question, could this device be potentially used on children or even premature infants who come home from the hospital, often with a high degree of respiratory distress?
Well, the requirements list we started with for this team, the Army X Tech Challenge, they wanted everything. And they wanted breaths per minute from 0 to 60. By the way, normal is about 10 to 12. The higher levels would be such as for infants. They wanted full range of tidal volume up from 0 up to 1,000 milliliters, which is quite high, or I think it might have been higher than that. What we're looking at is probably not going to be anything other than adult or older adolescent, and here's why. In my business activities, the various startups, meaning within my company, everything hasn't turned into business. It's some things you're exploring. But what we always set out to do is, you can be good at a lot of stuff, okay, that can work, or you can be great at certain things. And I guess my inclination is to find that certain area where you can really get a great solution for it, because things are so competitive. And for that reason, we don't feel that we are going to want to have something can address such a broad spectrum. The requirements are really quite a bit different, especially for infants, that it would be probably a different device, or you'd have a device that's only so-so at everything.
Well, and there's this passion piece, right, too. So if you are passionate about something, you throw your heart and soul into it, and you end up carrying it further than anyone else could with who didn't have that passion. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so we're going to see if we get Amy Monty's email into the Q&A so that those people who asked that question might reach out to Amy Monty. Amy Monty is one of our faculty members in the Department of Engineering Fundamentals, and if she doesn't know the answer to something, she will find it out. So this is from Joseph. For the 3 student speakers here, what was the hardest part, I guess, of your education that led to this final project, or possibly even what was the hardest part of this project? I think getting that gentleman's passport sounded pretty hard to do.
He did have to go through a lot of effort for that. Man, I feel like the hardest part of the process, not even the project, was trying to get home. like when you have all of the countries shutting down on you, flights are getting canceled. I don't know how many times my flight got canceled trying to get back to the US. I don't know about everyone else's, but I feel like it was a very difficult time trying to get money back. I think it took 4 or 5 months, if not more, to get my deposit back from the university's in Kiel's housing thing, because everyone got sick on there and then couldn't get the money back. It was just a process trying to do all of that while we were trying to start our project. I'd say that's probably the hardest part.
While trying to graduate. So you were having to do
Yes.
all of this. Yeah. Boy, that's like a challenge on a challenge there. Yeah. And so to answer Larry's question, is interning a requirement at Tech? And he highly recommends it and hopes all students take advantage of the opportunities. So it is not a requirement. Most of our students do either co-op or do an internship, or do multiple things like that, and on top of that, often they're participating in undergraduate research. There's a whole bunch of extracurricular activities. The other aspect of what a lot of students do here at Tech is that they participate in the sort of vertically integrated enterprise programs and clubs, right? So we were just talking earlier this evening with another colleague about the concrete canoe competition. I mean, there's I don't know, there's probably got to be a couple hundred different clubs and student orgs that you can get involved with in one form or another. So there's a whole bunch of things to do. Very few people graduate from Tech without participating in at least one thing. Haley, how many things did you participate in?
I want to say 3. So I was Copper Country Robotics for all the robotics clubs that I was helping out and mentoring with. And then I started a club called TPEG for Theme Park Engineering Group. I was in SWE and ASME, so Society of Women Engineers and the Mechanical Engineering, Association of Mechanical Engineers, whatever it is.
I think you just listed 5.
Did I? I don't even know. Probably too many is the answer.
Well, that's what makes it fun, right? The community of people that you meet. So Eric asks, was CPAP and or VPAP machines considered for some of the ventilator needs? They have humidity supplement tanks. It seems like they could be programmed provided they could work safely in higher oxygen situations.
We became a bit familiar with them, and they would come up here and there. And I have to be honest, I didn't learn a whole lot about them by the time we got further down the road, looking at the potential of this going beyond the capstone project. We're really focused on a different market segment. And no one we talked to suggested that those would be good solutions for the specific application of assisting in full cardiac arrests or codes, which are somewhat unique in that they don't, even in the hospital, either in a cardiac care unit or the emergency department, they do not use a standard ventilator when somebody is coding. Main reason why is that the ventilator is monitoring pressures and the chest compression completely confuses it, and the alarms are going off and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So it's really good at doing what it's supposed to do, but it is not good in that. So they are using a bag with some sort of airway, an ET tube or otherwise. And anyway, those other devices have their particular purposes, and for what we're looking at, there's no indication that they would be a good solution.
Well, in this next question, I'm going to read out, how do you all, so speaking to the group of 4 of you, I think, manage to balance your current job internship responsibilities with the development of a new company? Is it challenging? And so I have an add-on question to that is, did the 2 of you actually graduate, or has Bill got you on the hook to kind of keep, like you're not really graduated until you finish this, until you do this company thing? Like how are you balancing all that?
We just pull out the diploma again. My proud moment here. It's actually in the thing here. I really did graduate.
So why are you still engaged?
You guys asked nicely. I can't pass the opportunity to share our story, I'd say.
No, and thank you again from me hearing back from you. So it sounds like it's your love of alma mater and sharing the tale, the crazy tale of working your way back from Germany in a pandemic. Bill, do you have anything to add?
Well, in terms of the continued pursuit of the business, I talked to many of the students, and they were often, going on with where they were going to go with their careers and jobs. And Theo was still around, and we ended up with another student joining us who was not involved with the project before that. And I think there's still maybe some interest on their part if we pull something. A lot of it will come down to timing.
Yeah, I could kind of touch on it a little bit. So it was kind of just, since I was the only one left ungraduated and nobody else kind of had their future plans all lined up, I joined in on it because I did have kind of this idea of maybe doing something entrepreneurial in the future. And kind of this was a great opportunity to kind of explore it under Bill's kind of guidance. But as far as moving forward, I'm still searching for kind of a position somewhere, but I kind of figured that I'll find something kind of as far as income, and then kind of work with this on the side of things and kind of develop it as it goes in my free time. And if things kind of grow and flourish, then maybe hop onto a kind of full-time thing, maybe way down the line.
No, that's good. You're probably going to get like 27 job offers after this, Theo. So, but send Theo's job offers to Bill Endres' email.
I'll pass them along.
So I'm going to direct this to Theo. Did you ever consider yourself to be entrepreneurial before this project came along?
I'd say I always had an interest in things. Way back in high school, I kind of had a background in woodworking and stuff from my father. And I've done a number of like projects for neighbors and stuff. And, the thought always kind of came up of like, hey, maybe I could profit off of this, do kind of some kind of business off of it. And I've always kind of had the idea that I might pursue an MBA at some point in my career as far as businesses and planning that. So this was kind of an opportunity where kind of my interests aligned, and I thought there was some potential in it.
All right, and here's a great question for you three students and former students, your alumni. So this is from Michael. What types of computers should I bring up north? So I think this is a future student. Are there PCs that students can use for rendering work, or should I invest in an AMD Ryzen Threadripper system to keep in my dorm?
Well, I have a Spectre 360. I'm not using it right now, obviously. This got me through the last years of high school and all 4 years of college. And it ran I had 3 different CAD programs, the different simulation things that I had to run. Literally everything was running on that computer, which I'm very impressed with. But there's also the campus computers that you can use. So you don't need to have a super powerful one, but it is pretty handy to be able to run at least some of the programs so you can do things at home or whatever. I know most people actually have desktops, if not also laptops. I don't know about Ethan, you probably have some fancy computer.
No, actually, in the computer engineering program, I got along on my 2015 MacBook Air, and that was it.
No, that's good to know. That's good to know. Oh gosh, we're down to 2 open questions, but we're at 7:15, and so maybe we can answer these last 2 questions really quickly. Bill, Endres, what are the top skills a future student needs to succeed in senior design and succeed as an engineering student at Michigan Tech?
I don't know if it's a skill per se, but develop a desire to not give up until you've figured out how it works or why it's not working, whether it's a thing or a homework problem or a simulation or a little bit of code you're writing, whatever you're working on, to have that desire to make it work, get through it, and figure it out. And get through 250 inches of snow every year too. It all goes hand in hand.
All you need is your ski goggles. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, well, and so I guess this is referring to kind of back when you were in high school. Did any of you do a high school internship program? Is that kind of, or was that kind of the role of FIRST Robotics, do you think, was?
So me personally, I did not do an internship program, but I did dual enroll throughout my entire high school. I actually came in with 25 credits. What I would recommend is I actually took a pre-engineering program through University of Michigan Flint and came in with some of my engineering credits. I didn't have to take E&G 1101 or 1102, which is great. But no, so no internships. Also, I worked over the summers. So I don't know what there is out there for internship programs, but I'd say it's never a bad thing to have more experience.
Good point.
Oh, sorry. I guess, well, I'll kind of add on to that a little bit, Haley. So yeah, I just to kind of second that, I did dual enrollment, not quite to the level that Haley did. I mostly just got some of my math classes out of the way. I did have an internship while I was in high school for a civil engineering firm, and that was valuable because it allowed me to realize that I do not want to be a civil engineer.
Well, and how can you know? I know that in my first 4 semesters, every time final exams came around, I was like, this is when the catalogs were actually like books. I was like, okay, what else could I major in? You know, it was just, how can you really know what your major is, you know, as you leave high school, unless you had an internship and had a chance to kind of figure that out, which might help you figure out what you don't want to do, as you were just pointing out. All right, we've actually answered all the questions and we still have 48 attendees. I cannot thank our alumni and Bill and about to graduate student enough for doing this. So I want to thank you, Ethan, Theo, Haley, and Dr. Bill Endres. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Next week, Marty Lagina and the Curse of Oak Island. He is like one of the 2 brothers who bought the island. And so it should be awfully fun to be there next week. Invite your friends and family. And until next week, take care.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.